Good evening, everyone. My name is Swapnali, and on behalf of Amayo, I welcome you all for this exclusive roundtable on powering the customer experience, a BFSI spotlight. I thank you so much, all of you, for sparing your time today and joining us for this session. The roundtable is happening on Teams platform, so your names would be visible in the attendee list, and also the session would be recorded. I hope this is fine with all of you. Giving a brief background about the roundtable today, BFSI industry is the backbone of our economy. The current digital disruption is driving the banking and BFSI sector. With huge customer base, it becomes even more imperative for BFSI organizations to provide exceptional customer services. They need to keep up with the experiences that their customers are expecting and need to realize that the modern consumer wants more than products, they want relationships. Thus, businesses need to use technology to disrupt, engage, and strengthen connections. It requires a sophisticated customer interaction software which stores, processes, and analyzes the data in an efficient and cost-effective manner and change the way to build customers and to give exceptional experiences with interaction and with technology. To set up the context and take the discussion forward, I would like to invite all our speakers, Mr. Mahesh Agarwal, who is the Head of Information Management at SB General Insurance, Goenka, who is Customer Experience Agile Insurance Company, Mr. Nitin Talwar, Deputy VP IT at Aviva India, Smita, who is the VP Customer Service and Service Delivery at Equitas Small Finance Bank, Siddharth Sinha, who is Senior VP Online Sales and Digital Strategy at Bharti Extra Life Insurance, Mr. Sunil Lohani, VP and CISO at National Bank Limited, Mr. Kunal Murthy, VP Finance Operations and and Mr. Rupesh Pawar, who is the CISO at Universal Sompo General Insurance Company Limited. And the overall panel would be moderated by Mr. Sachin Bhatia, who is the co-founder at Mayo. With this, over to you, Sachin, to take it forward from here.
Thank you very much, Swapnili. And if you can just unshare the slide so that we can see everybody on the big screen, it will be nice. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sachin. I'm founder and global sales and marketing head for Ameo. And first of all, wishing that in these tough times, everybody and family and friends are keeping safe, and you guys are taking necessary precautions, and hopefully all of us will get vaccinated very soon so that we can return to as normal as we can. Ameo has been we're an 18 years young organization. We brought in the region's first all software contact center suite, and today we serve about 2,000 customers in 60 countries across Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Africa. And with such sessions, it is our endeavor to bring in experts, learn from them ourselves, and for our larger audience and the industry, bring in insights around what is the top of the mind problem in front of leaders and how they are solving it, right? So most of what I'm going to talk about is not going to be about Ameo, but folks that Ameo works with, and what are we hearing as challenges, and then throwing some of those problems at you and learning from you guys that what have you guys observed in your organizations or the environment in general, and what are some of the practical projects or suggestions that you can bring or you have experienced, or if there are any insights, something works, something not works, so that the audience actually gets something which is actioned immediately. Now, for today, it would not be wise if we don't include something that has happened because of pandemic in the last 12 months. And let me initiate the conversation by a very interesting topic. We have been running webinars and roundtables around this topic for quite some time now, but I think given the last 4 weeks, it has become more relevant. Pandemic forced us into a remote scenario, right? None of us were actually prepared or could imagine that it would happen this fast, though all the BCPs and HAs and DRs is in. But when the actual stuff happened, I think it was chaos. Ameo itself had to move about 50,000 of its customers, contact center agents to remote in a span of 2 weeks. Unprecedented, right? I mean, the amount of work that was required, and we were also running remote while we were doing this. So let me open the discussion by saying, the pandemic forced us to go remote. We all know that, but is it here to stay? What's being discussed in your organization? Is this a long-term strategy, a hybrid strategy? Are we all waiting for stuff to come back? What are some of the challenges around it? And to kick off the discussion, let me invite, if we have Ankit here from Bajaj Allianz. Ankit, what has been your experience for some of the functions, the customer-facing functions, and we'll try and focus on those functions.
Yeah.
When did you guys go remote, and what are you guys discussing today? Is it going to stay remote, or we're going to go back?
Thanks, Sachin, for that question. And as you rightly mentioned, pandemic actually forced us all to really, go remote. But what's after that, right? And at Bajaj, what we believe is that it's going to be a hybrid model, right? There would be certain things which will require, people to be there in the office, right? We are not shutting all the offices, but yes, a large population of ours, has actually moved to remote only, right? And one challenge though, and as you said that let's focus on the customer facing. Let me talk about call centers, okay? So when you talk about call centers, right, we know that technology allows us to do remote, right? But what about a challenge which I actually call it as a socio-economic challenge? Typically, when we look at call center folks, they are at the bottommost pyramid, right? They're sitting there, right? Majority of them perhaps would be staying in a hostel or in a PG, where are 10 different people also working from home in the same room, right? In a call center technology, you in a physical infrastructure, you have those noise cancellation devices and all those stuff. You can't really move that to individual homes, right? Yes, the technology is there to manage that. Yes, from a security standpoint, for call routing standpoint, governance standpoint, you can do all of that. But what about this challenge? The other thing is, we know in India, not all the places would have electricity supply which is adequate, right? That's also, I would say, it's a socio-economic challenge, right?
Yeah.
Not every person who's there in the call center can afford to have generators or inverters, right? How you going to manage that piece when you're talking about remote, because you're there on the call? It's a practical thing, right? I've seen that with us,
Sure.
where people are taking the calls, and all of a sudden the electricity goes up. What can you do? The call gets dropped. Now that's a bad experience.
Yeah.
At the same time, let's say somebody, and we actually discussed this in a jovial way, but let me share. A young lady who is also a call center executive, recently got married, uh, living in a 1 BHK, flat, with in-laws. It's a joint family, right? And she's on a call, and the mother-in-law is asking for a tea.
Oh.
Right? How are you going to manage those kind of socio-economic challenges, right? We may laugh at it, but yeah, from practical standpoint, right? Those are there. So from that point of view, I still believe the hybrid, specifically for call center, because I don't see a solution right now to this, And if any of the panel member have any solution that they've implemented to look at it, most welcome, right? Because this is, I believe, is the most important and practical challenge today when you talk about specifically about call centers, right? For other processes, for other profiles, right? People like you and me, we can work at home, right? And there is no internet issue, there is no electricity issue, and all those stuff. We have a separate room. The kids are not, after us, and all that stuff. But what about that particular population, right? And in fact, the customer facing part is done by them, right? We don't do that day in, day out, right?
Interesting problem, Ankit. So I have two stories to share. We were speaking in one of the forums for Africa, and Nigeria doesn't have electricity supply, not even close to India, right? So the biggest problem that the contact center owner had was to make sure there is sufficient diesel supply to most of the folks which were critical, so that the contact center
Yeah.
doesn't go down. So interesting kind of problem. But on the socio-economic thing, one of the things that we observed is today, I think from tier 2, tier 3 cities, a lot of folks are filtering in because they have to earn their livelihood. And if remote is announced forever, a lot of them probably, and there are larger infrastructure. I'm not generalizing, but there are mostly, they have to live in these circumstances because, a 2, 3, 4, 5K rent for them is really, really big. So if they are back at their native places, then at least 60, 70% of that problem goes away. That's also coming from surveys. But let me also bring in Samir right now. Samir is from Max Life Insurance. He runs the digital marketing function. I'm assuming that also encompasses the customer acquisition side. Samir, how did you guys handle remote? And are you thinking of it as a forever problem? And maybe if any of you have thoughts around what Ankit mentioned, we can take that forward because that's a very, very real problem in India of people living in 1 BHK and two people doing work from home, both working in a call center. How would this even work? I'll have one more interesting story after Samir makes his comments.
Hi Sachin. So the way our organization is looking at remote working is that it's the new reality. We are not trying to run away from it. We are trying to embrace it the best way we can. The way I would want to look at this is that you could divide the workforce into two. One is empowered, result-oriented folks. The other is monitored, task-oriented folks. Problem lies in the second set. For instance, we have our own telecalling unit, uh, which would fall in the second category, where you would want to have certain control over productivity metrics of how much time people are logged in, what time are they coming into office, what time are they moving away. But the minute we move away from this mindset that this bunch of folks need to be monitored, only then they will deliver a certain productivity, to a mindset where you empower them, you drive them on the right KPIs, align them with business priorities, and then enable them in every way. Whether it's giving them laptops. Currently, a large workforce of telecalling continue to be on desktops, and we've built some custom-made ad hoc solutions for them to work on mobile when they are home, right? But it's not a long-term sustainable strategy because there are connectivity problems, internet bandwidth issues, and hence, as long as we can provide them the infra and align them with business priorities, I think we can actually do much better than the productivity that we used to manage from going forward.
Samir brings a very, very valid point. When we were looking at the real challenges in short term and long term, the base problem was reliable infrastructure, right? That was the base problem. But and we'll be coming to Kunal, Mahesh, and Nitin, and these guys, more or less, technology can solve it. I always say it's computer science, not rocket science. If you can imagine a problem, I think technology can solve it. However, there were very interesting challenges like the first request we got from one of our customers were we want to move remote. We said, okay, you can possibly do VPN. Here is what we can do. Then he said, we don't have any machines at at the agent's desk. Can we now run it completely on mobile? And we said, okay, we have never thought about running a complete contact center application on a mobile app. And the team actually responded really well. And we got out a application on which you can actually do predictive dialing and CTI on an Android phone, right? And that sort of was hotcakes because there was no infrastructure available. It didn't require a lot of bandwidth. You could do it over a 4G network combined with the telco network, and that solved the problem. But that was short term. I think the bigger challenge, like in contact center, in a floor environment, if I raise my hand and I'm an agent, somebody comes in running and solves my problem. But if somebody from remote is saying that I'm not able to log in, do you trust the device? Do you trust the network? Or do you trust the agent, right? It becomes a problem of accountability. So when I say the true infrastructure trust layer, it should give you visibility. It's not essentially, so if there is a network problem, one should know that there's a network problem. You should be able to monitor it that way, that yes, there is a network issue and hence maybe the calls should proactively get routed. Once that trust network is there, then a different method of measuring KPIs, because contact centers are such operational functions that everything like average handling time. I always say that average handling time, it can work ways, right? It's a double-edged sword. You want to finish the call fast, but you want to then increase the NPS. So maybe that the dichotomy will get settled if you can empower people by saying, here is your business KPI, and now let's get and do whatever. The third is call centers is always freshers today. right? In our head, call centers is always freshers. However, I think with remote coming in, you would have retired servicemen, you would have housewives who are much more responsible, who are able to see for most of the call center folks, it's their first job and stepping stone into operations. However, imagine for a slightly disabled person or for a housewife who's well educated, can possibly look at it as an opportunity for lifetime. So we will also see different kind of workforce. So when we are thinking long term, I think the challenges become very, very different. Let me also bring in Smita. Smita, how did you guys manage it? Now that we are looking at all functions, you had service delivery and customer service at Equitas. Was it remote? Is it going to be remote? How are you guys looking at it?
So yeah, as I mentioned at the start, it's been remote for now almost a year, and we've been doing pretty well. But what we've also done is during the pandemic, we actually have worked with a lot of different projects, which will say how we enable customers to visit their homes, either app or the and should we be doing so there've been lot of cases yeah risk is always
Smita, I might have to stop. I'm getting a lot of age.
uh,
We can't hear you, so there is
uh,
that problem of infrastructure that we just discussed. We are witnessing it right now. So I'll have to stop you, and we can just check at the back end what's the issue on the network.
okay.
Smita, can you hear me?
Sachin, I can hear you, can't hear Smita.
Yeah. I think she's having issues with the network. If somebody from the organizing team can just
I
call.
will check.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
have noted it and I'll just call her up and check.
Okay.
We
So
can move on.
so what we understand is that we had to go remote. There are issues around socio-economic conditions. There are issues around infrastructure, and then I think Samir brought in a very interesting view that if we can not think about those operational KPIs and start bringing in business KPIs, and I added that if it could be a different kind of workforce that might actually work out better. I feel that bringing people out from their native places creates a lot of emotional stress. If they are in their native places and can do this, I think most of us will be more comfortable and will do our jobs more in a much more pleasant manner than what we do today, because we are all siloed when we are in tier one cities. Let me bring in Kunal, Mahesh, and Nitin if you guys are there. What was the operations and IT view on this? Because the business immediately demanded, what are some of the things that are critical when we were looking at remote for short term? And if you're doing remote long term, what are some of the things that are top of the mind problems? And maybe if any of you can share what really worked for you guys, what kind of technology solutions, was it VPN, was it remote monitoring, what worked for you guys? Let me bring in Kunal first if he's around. Is Kunal there?
Sure, guys. So let me just give you a little flavor. Working from Yes Bank perspective, remote was never an option, but because of the pandemic, remote became an option. It became like a forced thing that we have to work remotely. And honestly, while talking about remotely, we had issues. First and foremost, from an infrastructure standpoint, a lot of people were issued desktops in my organization. We had to completely flip the coin and give them laptops. Okay, whether it was OSD, the customer service, etc., etc. So another reason why we are now considering remote permanently about X amount number of seats is because of cost saving. We realized that we don't need to keep that many number of seats in office on prem and move them off prem, because we save a huge lot of money whereby we can give up floors.
Yeah.
And as you all know, Yes Bank went through some kind of crisis last financial year, and cost has become a very imperative factor for that. So as a result of which, because of cost, we are deciding to move a lot of number of seats at home. But yes, that comes with a lot of implications. What is the cost? What are my benefits? One of the benefits is obviously my cost per seat, my rental cost, which you'll save. but obviously that gets superseded with Chromebooks, with laptops versus the desktop. But obviously there was a niche of people that can go work from home. I was talking to the security folks today. We have factored a risk to the management that, okay, guys, people are working from home, but there's a risk associated with it. What are those risks? The risk is about data leakages, not physically, but virtually. Anybody sitting in front of my laptop can look at the data. What are we trying to implement on that? For that, we're implementing different solutions. One is a behavioral analysis solution, of the employees, which is a monitoring tool in a software which tells you how the customer is going to behave as to what systems he's logging on, what application he's logging, and the frequency of it. Is it regular? Is it irregular? Then we have something called another software called the Zero Trust Network software. Then we have another solution which you're trying to do is, the monitoring of the computers, which will automatically have a control alt delete or a lock system after 5 minutes if we find any irregularities. But again, none of this is implemented. It's a thought. What really is implemented is we are providing Wi-Fi solutions to people, private networks, and a desktop. And one of the main reasons to move is cost saving.
Got it. Got it. And Kunal, that's hitting the nail on the head. We did a little bit of survey, and we basically said on a per seat cost, if let's say agent salary is X rupees or X dollars per month, how much amount of money was being spent on the OPEX infrastructure, right? And it was coming to be about 25% of agent salary. And that is no joke in a contact center because that's usually 50% of the cost. So 12.5% of bottom line was going in that. And that for a contact center kind of function, which is basically a people heavy, cost heavy function, was a huge advantage. Now, yes, there was some capex involved, like you said, you have to build an infrastructure. But if one can think of this and imagine this as a long term, and no surprise that 40% of our survey respondents, and these were essentially CIOs and CEOs and CFOs, most importantly, they were indicating that this is going to stay. The HR folks had an issue that, okay, onboarding, how would we do? But the operations folks were mostly okay with it. Mahesh, if you're around, yeah, Mahesh, how about at SBI General Insurance, right? Did you guys also take a similar approach? Was it more, no, this is key and we have to get back? What was your thought?
So when in the last financial year, I could recollect in the March 2020 when the pandemic occurred and there was a panic everywhere and we have to start working from home and we didn't knew any time or none of us know how indefinite we have to continue to work. So as rightly mentioned by Kunal, there are whatever he mentioned about the 3 points about the behavior analysis, zero trust, and the computer vision. Those are the areas where, yes, most of us are also working on at a POC level or understanding what can be done. So very well said, Kunal. Appreciate those points. What I would like to touch upon is on the customer experience. We exist because we want to give a customer a better experience. That's in one of our top priority. And the reason is simple to anyone. The companies who focus on the experience reduces the churn and increases the revenue. And one of the critical touch point is our call center, through which we can connect to the customer and we can discuss, we can do all sort of activity. In the pandemic, because of the call center guys could not connect, so we have actually worked out with VPN, VDI solution to ensure that there is minimal leakages and maximum output, and there is a security or a little safety around with that. So we immediately started with the VPN, providing VPN and the VDI, even though in the pandemic it was a major issue to most of us. But yes, that's where we have started. In the current scenario, we are looking for a face-to-face video communication. And when I say that, we know that the eye contact improves the relationship and facilitates a lot of openness. So when we are in the Teams call and we are in video, we have a better touch points. So in a remote pandemic situation, the customer can't come to our office. So how can we get a video enabled through cloud solution? How can we make that simpler and be in touch with the customer? Second point is on the customers will expect an omni-channel experience. So in the past, we have seen the brick and mortar stores aren't the only place where the customer interact. So like social media, e-commerce, the third-party reviews that we get on the sites, and the customer engages with our company through various digital mediums. So how do we make that in one place? How can we get the omni-channel support? How can we ensure that that experience the customer gets is very superb quality time? And
Yeah.
third, I would like to say about the real-time messaging is actually moving out. So it's getting into, and the email is getting out. So we tried working on getting the chatbots, understanding the customer, trying to connect with the customer during any pandemic which is happening, the NatCat, the natural calamities. In the month of May, we have seen a lot of natural calamities. So how do we connect? How do we understand our customer? How do we keep our customer more engaged and proactively connect with them rather than doing a reactive? So couple of points here. We are investing a lot on face-to-face video communication. We are working on the omni-channel service experience and a lot of activity happening on chatbots. And all of this we are getting in a hybrid model so that we get the best of on-prem and on-cloud.
So thanks, Mahesh, and we would be, in fact, these are all very, very interesting topics, and I will be bringing and touching the omnichannel and the bot FOMO, or real value in a while. But one point that you mentioned, and that's very close to heart. Ameo launched video as a channel during pandemic, and it was accelerated because we realized that contact center was the last line of human to human interaction that an organization could do, right? All feet on street was not available. And hence it took the center stage for all sales, service, collections processes, right? Everything that was, most of the time contact center is driving it. But I think post pandemic, it came at the center because there was no other method to drive it. And we realized that on the customer side, there was this missing piece of, they were missing that engagement with the organization, which somebody could do in a branch, and or an account manager would visit and stuff like that. And we realized that video could be an answer. High value interactions. If you could bring in video, then that is probably a better thing. So most of the organizations were focused on the downstream channel. So how do you reduce cost by messaging, because younger people, but there's also this room of high value interactions being done on video. And I think that's a very, very valid point. And that's a trend that we will see, in structured customer experience conversations that would increase. Let me bring in Nitin, Rupesh, and Sunil. On security, it would have been a nightmare, to implement some of these things. I know that the government eased out some of the regulations around work from home, especially in the call center. Earlier, it was absolutely not possible for the telco regulation, but that was allowed. So can I bring in Nitin, Rupesh, and Sunil? Maybe Nitin can go first on issues around security, compliance. What does it mean for all of us?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Sachin. So, pandemic, which brought in the culture of work from home, it wasn't a kind of an invention, and everybody of us do agree that it's more of a hybrid approach, majorly that we'll be following in BFSI sector. So over here, when we would need people to be working from home, working from office for a lot of times, I think hybrid is definitely going to stay. So that's where it looks to me that probably from a 5-day week work, there would be 3 to 4 day of people working from home, and then a 2-day working from an office. Maybe that's how it should be. We also got into all this structure, and the the BCP plan also failed for most of us, and then we all had to run around when suddenly the lockdown was announced. So the major challenges, as highlighted by all my colleagues here, were with the hardware, and then also on how the collaboration tools can be implemented, which you just covered. then security became definitely a major point of contention for all of us, and all our senior leaders were very much bothered about how are we going to keep things secured, and even Kunal covered about some of those items. So VPN, VDIs did come to our rescue. The parameter level enhancements, the bandwidth level enhancements we had to do in the infrastructure, the parameter level security that we had to enhance. We kind of added all our focuses towards creating a structure at the perimeter firewall or even in the internal organization level. The main thing that was skipping out was when we saw a very big spike in the phishing and smishing incidents. I think there was a education to the end users that was important. So that was one key focus areas where we even educated our end users and people who were using the devices. We had to educate them in terms of the smishing and phishing incidents that was happening, and we kind of created a penalty grade also for them. There were trainings conducted. So all those actually helped us a lot and survived this particular situation. And I think there are more to it, and that is definitely going to come. So that's how we actually moved out of it.
Sure, Nitin. Rupesh, you are a master in cyber law and security and an expert here. So, did organizations bypass a lot of what needed to be done? And I think for good reason, people will not say yes to that. But in long run, do we have a solution for this? If the business wants us to run completely remote in a contact center kind of environment, what's your view, right? Because you are the one who's saying, no, man, this is difficult to execute. So let me hear it from Rupesh and then Sunil sir on their views on this.
So already co-panelists Kunal have highlighted some of the challenges. Nitin also told some of the challenges, some of the solution. To be very honest with you, most of our PCP has been felt. Just be practical. We felt a lot of challenges like from IT perspective, as means most of users are on desktop. So to give the laptops, so laptops, whatever I'm getting on rent, that also initially I got it, but later on we faced the challenge in getting that laptop as well, double the price and everything. So arranging the Broadcom, any hotspot devices and all that, that will also become a challenge. The number one thing which, because nobody was knowing how long this COVID is going to be, this pandemic is going to be impact. So what happened is first challenge which people face is to avoid the how users are going to connect and how do they are going to change their password. So most of us given to be very honest, practically most of us given the exception. Now we also given the exception, but I have collaboratively worked with my IT team as well as my VPN team. I said, why can't we change the password from the VPN? So I worked with my VPN vendor. I told him I will give you one, because when you come in VPN, you can definitely enforce the policy. So initially I was also given the exception, but simply it was getting sought just by speaking and collaborating work between vendor and all that. So we give one permission, a password change permission, and then basically we have removed that exception. The second one more exception, not an exception, a compliance issue of the patching. Okay, so how do you do the patching? Okay, so somebody will say we have put the system on the auto download, auto update. However, to be very honest with you, it is failing in most of the system. Like I'm in insurance, so my investment team as well as my actuarial team and other department team person, they required some specific versions of Java. They required very specific versions and all that. So what do you do that? Again, there is one more compliance issue. Getting a risk acceptance sign off, it's not a solution. Then actually I worked with my endpoint management solution team with my IT. I told them I want these only approved patches to be go. How you do, I really don't know, because I explore the cloud-based patching solution option as well. However, that is again you are going to be cost, because everybody is going in cost conservative mode. because we have to look up the cost as well. So what we did is, so why I'm just talking very granular or maybe the technical challenges, and whatever I overcome it, so I'm just explaining. So what I did is I have to just increase my bandwidth by X portion. Like I will not say exactly how much it is, but I just increase my bandwidth. Why I have increased this bandwidth is I have just upgraded my endpoint management solution. Within that, in their newer version, there is an option was available wherein you can throttle your bandwidth, you can reserve your bandwidth to the specific activities.
Got it.
So that, yeah, so that solved my problem, not only my monthly patching, but my anything like my ad hoc patching, my browser patching and everything. So my entire vulnerability management program runs on that. Yeah, it's bit slow. It bit slow. I'm not saying so. Whatever activity it was happening when you are in the LAN network, it was taking, let's say, 30 days for me to do entire thing. It was taking me some time, 45 days. But at least I'm sure that I was not compliant. And
Yeah.
yeah, and one more practical challenge which I feel is, and I see the compliance, even though Tribe was ready to give the exemption to executive can take call from their home and all that. But for me, there was a compliance issue. Where does the recording is going to store? So the
Yeah.
first thought process, we spoke with some of the vendor. They are with the cloud-based application. In my last organization, Amayo, we are using Amayo. So in Amayo, we do in a two-level testing. So call center application earlier it was internal facing. So I said we will do external facing. That is the second option. But what is the option available? So Amayo already Sachin highlighted some set terms and back. They come up with the mobile application. So that helped me in two ways. What I did is I have just published that application within VPN, and users were connected, and then actually they are able to use my system from whatever policy core CRM and all that stuff. But again, we come up with the second approach with the help of Ameo, and we were able to put that in. So my all the call center recordings and everything was there, and the same challenge was with the investment team. Normally, call center function is the different, but for me in insurance, the investment team recording, especially the dealers recording.
Yeah.
Normally, people are using two different software, but then actually I take assistance from the Amayo team, and I was able to deliver that also. So for me, that was the main
And this
challenge.
was at India First Life, and I realized that Rupesh was with India First Life earlier, and they were a user of the system. But the same happened at Motilal Oswal Securities also. I should tell you that some of these challenges are very practical challenges. Can you record on phone? Is that even compliant and stuff like that? So thanks Rupesh for the kind words and some very practical suggestions on some of the issues around patching. I hope someday most of it can move to cloud, and we are sort of scot-free from all this, Java version and kind of stuff. And I'm a computer scientist, so I know what you're talking about. That subtle version changes and the software stops working. But let me also bring in Sunil. Sunil, the BFSI sector was not a cloud consumer, right? I am a vendor for the last 18 years, right? And most of the time, banks look at CAPEX, security, everything on-prem, at best your own private cloud, right? But has that changed now? Is there a real reason that people are saying, "Hey, I want a fast change. I don't want deployments in quarters. I want deployment in week or maybe tomorrow." And that I think only cloud applications or SaaS applications can do. Are the banks and the insurance companies more open for cloud solutions? That's I want to switch into that, and let me bring in Sunil from Nainital Bank. If a bank can do it, everybody can do it. So let me talk to Sunil about it. Sunil, what are your views on this? Are we cloud ready? What are the reasons we should move to cloud or not move to cloud?
Yes, basically now the regulations and the requirements are so essential. So it's a very challenging to adopt a technology quickly. So cloud is one of the solution who provides a quick solution and a OPEX model. Suppose if you go for a solution and if a very heavy investment required, but cloud can save your investment. First thing, there are certain other things which lower one-time spending, operating costs, use and allocate on demand, easy to expand and increase the agility, secure data storage. Professionals are easily available because suppose let's say example I take my bank's example. Experts are not easy to take every types of experts. So in the cloud, professionals providers which deliver better and more suitable solutions easily available. Big data management, deep data mining. So these are the things. More convenient, able to access, monitor anything, anywhere, increase IT management transparency. So these are the things
Sure.
which interact to move towards the cloud. So
Sure.
banks are going to adopt the cloud solution for like a cooperative banks for going for community cloud. Even though big private sector banks, ICCI, Yes Bank, they move for cloud solution like email solutions, like HRM solutions, CRM solutions, all these. Even our bank is also looking for that.
Excellent. Excellent. And that's the big.
Sachin, Siddharth
Yes.
here. If I can
Yes.
just bring some insurance
Yes.
perspective on the cloud thing. See,
Yeah.
around 3 years back, there's a regulation, of course, along with the IRDI also, that any data that is there, even if it is cloud city, it has to reside within the boundaries of the country.
Yes.
So data center obviously was a critical thing for us. Means AWS being there, their data center being Singapore, Salesforce was there, their data center was also outside India. So those challenges were there. But over the last 2 to 3 years, things have changed at that side also. The data centers actually has moved on to India. So that actually has given a lot of flexibility. From the insurers and the banks, we were always looking forward to tap that particular opportunity for us because that gives us a lot of flexibility, a lot of power. So once that changed from the cloud hosting side, that actually has opened up multiple doors for us. But I can speak about from my company side, we are actually were earlier apprehensive of using Salesforce, which is obviously a very, very robust CRM. Right now, we are actually embracing it with open heart because obviously the power that Einstein has and multiple other capabilities that Salesforce gives us, they gave us the confidence that the data center is there in India. There's no challenge on regulation. So of course, it's something that is very, very important.
Perfect point, Siddharth. I think today Amazon, Google, Azure, Oracle, all four have their data center, and some of them multiple data centers, and all four are wooing us because a lot of our applications have moved to the cloud. And most interestingly, SBI made a big announcement with Salesforce, right? But I know that the biggest deployments in contact centers that we are doing today are successful because of our Salesforce connection. So we are able to seamlessly integrate with Salesforce, bring all channel capability into Salesforce. And this is happening in weeks, right? These projects used to take integrations, used to take months and years and multiple system integrator partners. But with cloud, it's such well documented APIs that one is able to do that, with very little help. And out of the box connectors, I think Sunil also mentioned that there is so much expertise available because now there are well published documents. Then people are building expertise around it on their own. Now you have Amazon experts, you have Amazon storage experts. All these are simple things to do. Whereas any on-prem, you were sort of vendor locked in, right? Because you had to. And that's very encouraging to hear for somebody like me who has been waiting for cloud adoption, because people were always thinking capex versus opex, but suddenly I think the equations have changed. Let me also bring in.
In fact, Sachin, just to add,
yes,
at Bajaj Allianz, we are not only talking about our CRM or HR systems or cloud telephony call centers on the cloud, but our core policy admin.
Yeah.
Our core that has also moved to cloud.
Wow.
Right. So we have done that.
Extremely progressive, Ankit, because I think there are huge advantages of GTM and changes that you can do, right? You're not. So yes, you might be spending more in like 3-4 years time, but I think 3-4 years in our generation is like transformational. You can't see that long, right? Things are changing that fast. Excellent. Samir, you guys are a progressive organization. I've spoken to multiple folks at Max. How you run how about your thoughts on cloud? Most of it on cloud now, or is there still on-prem applications that you guys are using for your CRM, contact center, and stuff like that?
Quite a pertinent point, Sachin, there. I think traditionally all BFSI organizations have been wary of moving their to cloud and have relied for the longest time on their own databases. And we were also grappling with the same problem. We had multiple platforms, for instance, ad platforms, campaign automation platforms, call center CRM. They were all working in silos, trying to capture whatever information they could about customer footprint, and then trying to make sense out of it, right? But we realized the need that we need to look at this holistically and not platforms in silos. There are projects that we're pursuing currently, like lead scoring, voice to text, server to server integration, for with pre-approved cross-sell offers. All of them, make our basic cases of putting our data on cloud, and trying to navigate this is without compromising data security, ensuring that PII data does not move to cloud.
Sure.
We have to have a unique identifier. We create our own unique customer ID, and that is what we use to stitch all of this data together. So yeah, I mean, pretty much one of our key priorities going forward, moving all this data to cloud.
Yeah, so I just like to make a point here, Sachin. While for banks, while for the rest in the BFSI space, I guess it's a little more open. The regulator, which is RBI for banks, is still contemplating whether cloud should be an option or not.
And I lost Smita again. Are you guys able to
Yes.
hear me? Yeah,
And,
okay. Yeah, she's here.
So
Smita, we can hear
the
you now.
video KYC, yeah, you can hear me. So the video KYC process that we had, which was running for some time, so we got a recent regulation saying that you should have an on-prem model rather than a cloud model. So, we paused it for the moment. So, so yeah, we're waiting for the regulator to open it up for us.
Yes. No.
How about video KYC for you guys? Is it working? I mean, if you have to answer like in a single word, is it working? Did we reap the benefits of being able to onboard customers remotely? Maybe starting with Smita, and then other guys can give us single word answer for this.
So the video KYC process has gone through a journey for us with regulations coming every 6 months. So we've stopped, we've started, we've stopped, we've started. So hopefully we should restart in the next 3 months, but it's a super platform and it's the way ahead.
Got it. Anybody else wants to take a shot? Video KYC? Yes.
It's not related to just video KYC, even though the regulator has allowed it, but we do not have a big use case to have that video KYC yet.
Insurance.
However, all insurance companies have started a process of pre-issuance verification call. It's more about building the trust with the customer that, okay, before you're onboarded, we used to connect with the customer and speak to him. Challenge that earlier we had faced prior to this video adoption came in, we are not able to see who we are speaking to on the other side, the right party contact. And there is a tinge of mis-selling on the insurance. So the number is given of someone, but maybe the guidance of the customer, the sales guy can do that. Thanks to this onboarding of the video thing right now and adoption so high because of the pandemic, actually the digital drive was always there, but the digital adoption also has picked up multifold over the past 10 months. So our digital adoption on the electronic pre-issuance verification calling, which is a video-based onboarding, explaining the customer in a small 30-second video what the product is, and customer confirming, understand that in the next 30 seconds, it has actually helped us a lot on our quality parameters and the trust building with the customer. So that actually has been a very good thing.
Yeah, Sachin, I would also like to add from two perspectives. One, the video, the digital piece is helping us at the time of claims. So in the pandemic situation, when there is a real challenge, okay, we do a video verification of the car or the risk, because in the pandemic, the recent one which has happened, the employees cannot go and reach out to the customers on the cyclone site area. So we do a remote risk assessment through video. That is actually helping us. We do the streaming and then we do an analysis out of it, whether this was so. Let's say there are 50 such videos which we have captured. Then those analysis and whether it has came accurate or not. And again, as Siddharth mentioned, in the insurance sector, it's more about you need to ensure the data needs to reside in India. So that's where if you are compliant with, that's where we got the flexibility and we have moved ahead on the journey. As well as during new business policy issuance, what happens? There is a break. So a person, during every year, there is a break in insurance. So when there is a break in insurance, what we do a video risk assessment to ensure that there is no further damages which has happened. So these two technologies that remains the same. The video verification remains the same. So the folks from insurance sector will agree, yes, this is most of us are now on the ground to carry the same. Yeah. Over to you.
You're absolutely right. In the insurance sector, we realized, I think, apart from KYC, the video personal discussion or a video verification call was a more interesting use case that people were looking at, and we've seen adoption in that. Siddharth, will stay with you, and the discussion has gone so interesting that only our two topics have taken about 50 minutes, and I've learned so much. But let me quickly bring you on the change in channels, right? It was face to face. A lot of it had moved to contact centers, but alternate channels started coming in. E-commerce and aggregators came in. So from a sales standpoint, first purely from a business acquisition, have the channels changed in the last 12, 24 months? What are you seeing? And then the channels of engagement, whether it's more voice, more email, more SMS. Are you seeing a trend? More WhatsApp, for example. Are you seeing a trend there that you can share with all of us?
Certainly, you have already spoken about more WhatsApp, and that's the reason even our chat environment on the WhatsApp has really picked up. We have already launched 3 phases of improvement on that side. But to your question, I'll just break that into 2 parts. One is at the onboarding stage, how the channel grid has moved across. We anyway were pushing across for digital drive. So us and other insurers were actually getting away from the paper-based onboarding to a digital onboarding. Now with the pandemic, what happened, even that face-to-face interaction was not even required. Thanks to, once again, the legal and compliance team, they gave us some leeway along with the regulator that the wet signature, which at least in one form was required, so that was taken away. In lieu of that, an OTP-based verification was adopted. So since the OTP-based verification got adopted, last year, April, May, when it was complete lockdown, I could not have met anyone, even my neighbor next door. Still, a policy could have got sourced because of that OTP-based validation, and we were very quick. But almost all insurers, including ours, were ready. We quickly implemented that. So that is at the onboarding stage. As we speak along, what I see right now, earlier it used to be completely physical, but the phygital thing, physical plus digital. So that hybrid model, as we are moving across to the new normal, I'm sure lockdown is getting eased out. So the phygital thing will take away on that particular space. From the customer servicing perspective, the digital drive, we have been pushing our customer, or at least trying to push our customer to do more self-servicing and digital adoption, like on our website, the chatbot, or as we speak right now, very heavy campaigning on our WhatsApp chatbot, and the adoption thing has really grown high on this. One particular instance that I can share with you, which actually is about sharing of load also. So when actually the lockdown happened, the peak of March, that March 3rd week, at that particular time, obviously all our branches got closed, but the customers obviously had to come back for the solutions or connect to our branches which they used to walk in. So our contact center volume went very high, even though we were quickly able to switch on to a work from home with a soft tele and all, but the volume went very high. So what we envisaged, and we had done that, we had given access to our branch operations people. So we have 300 branches. Now, workload for this branch operations people, most of them have laptop. Were quite less because no one is walking to the branch, they are working from home. So we gave them the capability at least to cater to the email from their end. So the contact center was focused on with all the soft telephony and all on the voice side, and this particular piece within our branch infrastructure, we are catering to the email side. So
Got it.
overall on the journey, if I see, there has been a complete mix of how a customer is also getting approached, plus how you are also tackling that particular problem on
Yeah, I think, and again, the example that you just gave, we were discussing a while back. If you want such flexibility in systems that today you are handling a branch and tomorrow you should be on the email response management system, stuff like cloud and agility, those licenses become super critical, right? I want 100 licenses for 15 days, right? Such things were not possible. But you gave this very interesting suggestion that shuffling, rejigging of workforce depending on who is capable of doing what and can be addressed. In fact, post April, we did a survey and there was a 40% increase in the inbound call volume month on month compared to pre-pandemic. And then it stayed at that level and people were just trying to reduce that through either a self-service IVR or converting it to an outbound call that we will call you back because you want to manage load. This was discussed with Deepu from Bajaj, and he gave me that suggestion that itself can take away because you can handle the peak and distribute it like we are trying to do for Corona, right? Inbound to outbound call volume. Let me
more important thing that digital chemical does is the training piece. See, when we did the shuffling, it was not overnight. We had spent a couple of days to train these people because they knew being branch people, they knew on the product side. But how to write the email and all, so those things were quickly done across, at least this basic thing. Then obviously it's more about learning. So digital also played a big part in training the sales people, the contact center people, and also our complete branch operations people on this thing. So that also was a very critical thing on that.
Okay.
And in fact, Sachin,
yes, sir.
For us, at Bajaj, the call volume actually dropped. We're talking about the call volume going up. For us, actually it dropped, and it's still dropping, month on month, right? And our customers are actually moving more towards the digital. As Siddharth mentioned about WhatsApp, right? I would say WhatsApp is a very, very powerful piece right now. While we know that there are some security things going on here and there, right? But even if, let's say, WhatsApp is shut down, people will move to Signal, Telegram, and all, right?
Correct.
So these kind of messaging apps are really very powerful. For today, users are right now. I've actually released my seats.
Correct, Ankit. When Ameo was one of the early Wawa partners, WhatsApp Business API partners, and we brought in the WhatsApp capability to Ameo. And one of the things that we realized is there is this huge end-to-end journey that you can do. So, for example, you can send a notification, right? Now, this notification could be your order has been done, your policy is issued, whatever, right? And then from within that moment, a conversation can start with a bot, right? So, for example, customer immediately says, when will I receive it, or etc. A bot could answer it. And as soon as it gets complicated, a human being can come in, and user doesn't have to do anything. He's still on that WhatsApp window. That's a very unique experience from a message to a bot to a human being, all in like a span of minute. And I've seen that happening in collections a lot, in sales use cases a lot, notification use cases a lot. And that's for a user, it's an extremely seamless and reduces the cost drastically, right? Handling a WhatsApp message versus handling a call, I think a factor of 1:6 in terms of cost.
Huge.
Okay, let me ask a final question to some of the folks. There are a lot of questions that I had, but this is one of my favorites. So, I'm a son of a 10-year-old and a 11-year-old. And a couple of years back, my son got this fidget spinner, right? And he used to keep doing, I don't know if you know what a fidget spinner is, right? If you're a parent, most likely you know it. Yeah. So they keep doing this and they don't know why they are doing it, right? But it's a fun activity. Even I do it. Now, sometimes I look at AI in our hands, I look at it as fidget spinners that we don't know why we need it, but all of us feel that, there is something that we need to be doing. If I'm not doing it, am I missing out? So let me put that question to you guys. Have you seen a real life project with impact in your organization or as a consumer also, which actually made a bottom line or a top line impact? right? It's a tough question. I know all of us want to talk about what will AI do, but I want to know, has AI done something for you guys, right? Maybe it's a reduction in call volume, simple, intelligent things. It need not be artificial also, right? But tell me stuff that, and what's your personal belief, right? Is it more fad and FOMO, or there is real applications that are there? And let me bring in Siddharth, because you were continuing on that path of bots, and I'll also bring in Mahesh and Smita on this one, and then we'll open the floor. But please, guys, I know I'm putting you on a spot, but
No, no, certainly it's a very good spot to be in, Sachin. Actually, we have done a use case. At once again, on the overall revenue assurance on persistency renewal collection, what happens in insurance, the renewal in life insurance, the renewal collection experience, most customers and the insurer sees 1 year down the line. So we do not know what is the kind of business that we are onboarding at an onboarding stage. We have done a lot of analytics, and through experience of almost 10, 11 years, we know that there is a customer behavior, this is the customer's profile, and the distributor behavior both plays a part, along with certain other economic conditions, obviously financial constraints as we speak right now because of COVID. Now, factoring these things into the distributor and the customer behavior and the profile perspective, we have built up a model which at an onboarding stage can predict what is going to be the persistency or likely to be the persistency of that particular set of business that I'm onboarding at the end of 1 year and 30th month. Now, this is a great thing. How do we use this? On that thing, what we are doing right now is the onboarding experience that we are giving customers is different. So that is where artificial intelligence is playing its part. If it is we have actually categorized B1 to B5. I'm just taking for the ease B1 and B2, we are considering a green channel. It's a superior straight-through process experience. No further questions asked. One shot issuance, immediately customer gets an experience. If it's a B5 case, which is the worst of the lot that comes across, that persistency will be very poor. Certainly, even at the time of pandemic, actually we are trying to constrain it, and there are some physical interventions like risk team visiting them, validating the customer's capability to pay for long amount. So coming from where you were asking, yes, this is a case of artificial intelligence, which is actually helping us identify at onboarding and then categorizing the journey, whether it's straight-through process, where there is digital intervention, or whether you need physical intervention. I'm quite certain that this physical intervention go and the real robotics will play a part in some years, but I'm hopeful for that.
Interesting, Siddharth. So I see the models, the data being used as models. Yes, that's a great application, and time would tell whether the prediction on those models was resulting. But I think that's a great application. Then some of the query, handling queries repetitive queries being answered by bots is another application. We are very, very short on time. I've run 5 minutes over time, but let me bring in Smita and maybe Ankit. I'll love to hear views from you too. And then if somebody else has a view on AI, we will listen to that and then wrap up the session.
Sure. So AI is the way ahead for Equitas, and we have done a lot of programs on AI, customer reach programs, and marketing campaigns run on AI. So if there is a missed call number that you're asked to call on a marketing campaign, you're invariably speaking to our bot. So there is no manual intervention. This has been running pretty successfully for the last, I can say, some 8 months now. And similarly, likewise, we have a couple of our customer engagements, which is completely on the bot, which is running seamlessly very well. So certain issues that we have with the bot is on the bot learning. So if the customer is saying yes in a specific way and the bot doesn't understand it, so these are the issues. Yeah, that of course will be there. However, that's taken into account through the training of the bot. So bot from the customer reach program and from the marketing perspective, it's worked really well. We are bringing it into regular servicing. So if the customer calls are toll free, we are implementing bot, and Amio is helping us out with it. So we're working on a project. Yeah.
Thanks for the shout out there. But I'll tell you one use case where we have seen it really working, and that is collections reminder. That's an expensive, necessary evil, and you can actually reduce the cost of collections reminders drastically by using a simple bot. it's a very low hanging fruit, and if somebody's not doing it, I would strongly recommend, talk to your vendor or talk to us. It's something that can you can start seeing impact in days. But yeah, Smita, valid point. I think the outreach, outbound, that's a little easier. Appointment setting, those are things that one can easily do because the context is very well defined. You can know
Exactly.
what you're calling out for, and
Exactly.
you still should have a human being if the bot is not sort of able to handle it. Okay, Ankit, you have a view on this at Bajaj.
On
You guys are, I know that
yeah,
there are a lot of things that you guys do on automation, bots, digitalization, anything that has
yeah.
really worked, and you can throw some numbers.
So I'll not talk about the chatbots when you talk about the AI and all, right? Because I guess that's another point, right? The other place where you actually implemented AI is on our claims. Be it a motor claim or a health, insurance claim. Right? And what we believe is that AI can work well when you have a good data strategy. Right? And being in business for the last 20 odd years now, right? We have a huge data on claims. Right? So we have actually leveraged that technologies, and we have a motor on the spot settlement option where the customer can just scan certain documents, click few photographs, upload it on the app, and you get a on the spot settlement. Right. Similarly, for our health claims, when the hospitals are sending out for cashless authorizations, right? There also, why somebody has to look at manually. You use your power of data, put in AI onto it, it's going to learn over a period of time. Yes, right? But use cases which are going well for us, and we are strong. The other piece, Sachin, which we believe is, Smita also mentioned a little bit on that, is voice. Right? I guess we all need to move towards that. There's a huge potential. Yes, there would be a little, challenge when it comes to India because we have different dialects and all. But I guess technology is learning, pretty fast in this domain, right?
Yeah.
A company like yours and some other, they are investing hugely on this, right? And that's what we feel, right? Voice is going to be there every day because there will be a point in time where a person would get bogged up with all these apps, right? There are so many apps in your mobile today,
Yeah.
right? You would need voice at a point in time where you just want to put a claim. So that's we are also moving. Yeah.
Yeah, Ankit, my 10-year-old is more comfortable saying "Okay, Google" than doing a search, and he searches is much faster than me, and I'm not ashamed of that because I was a keyboard generation guy and went to mobile. But the way the kids are talking to Alexa, I think they would be much more comfortable with the natural interfaces. And if it has happened in the
Absolutely.
consumer level, I can assure you, whether it's us or somebody, but we'll end up having great quality of speech recognition, wherein we don't have to think twice and it will actually get the mood. It's that simple.
Yes.
But it's just a matter of time because there is
Absolutely.
enough amount of data that needs to be collated. Cool, guys. I think we have run out of time. There is one tip, like the WhatsApp tip, I wanted to give to all of you. This was also a recent observation. If you're running any sort of outbound processes, then another low-hanging fruit with about a 15-20% call pickup rate that you can do is taking Truecaller business identity. If none of you have tried it, just try it. You could actually increase call pickups rate overnight by 15-20%, right? Because they know that the brand is calling you. I don't pick up unknown numbers anymore, but if there is a brand identity, it helps. With that, I think we have run out of time. This was the most interesting session I've had in recent days, guys. I hope we all got to share and learn a little bit. I'm very active on LinkedIn. If there is discussion on any of these things that we want, I'll be in touch with all of you. And wishing again that everybody stays safe in this tough time. Wishing the same for your friends and loved ones. And thank you so much, Swapnili, over to you. Thank you for arranging this for us, and thank you to the organizing team. Thank you, guys.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you too.
Yeah, thanks a lot, all of you. for sparing time today and joining us for this interesting session. We will be sharing the recording after the session, say latest by tomorrow. And stay healthy and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All the
Bye.
best. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.